Hi, what a cutie.
She
Oh,
just,
that's a
she just,
Pomeranian, isn't it?
yeah, she's a mix. She likes to
Oh,
come in. When she hears me talking on Zoom, she likes to come in and see what's.
oh, hi, sweetie. Hi. Oh,
She just had
she's, huh?
she had a bath yesterday, so she's looking pretty snazzy.
Yeah, she's very fluffy looking. Oh, you're so cute. What a cutie pie.
Yeah, she rolled in grease yesterday.
Oh.
My wife spilled some cooking oil that she deep fried some of the fish in, so my dog smelled like oily fish.
Oh my good. Oh my gosh. No wonder you had no choice. You had to give her a bath.
No choice. And I was super busy.
Oh dear. That
Just
sounds like something a dog would do though. They get into trouble. They're like they just want to have fun, they don't know it's like going to cause problems.
so I posted our last video, and you quickly wanted to remind me to kind of separate the Enneagram from the pentagram, and I
Yes.
did that. And
Oh, great. Thanks.
so thank you for that. But today we're going to go in a little different direction. And I've been excited to talk to you, but at the same time, it makes me sad too to have these conversations in a way, because of where it leads people.
Yeah.
So what are we going to talk about today? Why don't you give me a little idea?
Okay. Well, I think you wanted to talk about witchcraft, correct?
I did. You wrote the book Spellbound,
Yeah.
and you mentioned it was very hard for you. I imagine it was.
Oh no, that was the chapter on witchcraft that I wrote for that book, volume 2 of World Religions and Cults, I think it's called. Yeah, that was very difficult because it's not emotionally difficult. It was difficult because of the material, organizing it, and also trying to explain it, because it's just like so many things in the occult and the new age. There's things that people believe that aren't true. Then there are things that people believe that are based on something that people who practice those things think is true, but it's not true. And it's just it's just having to cut through all of the layers of confusion, deception, false beliefs. I mean, even people in like witchcraft beliefs, believe things that aren't true in terms of the history of witchcraft, for example. So that it's like, but then they'll repeat it or advertise it or promote it, and then other people like Christians will hear it and they think it's true. So and then you have to explain, no, it's not true. They think it's true, but it's not true. And you had people within the witchcraft community who deceived others. But the history of witchcraft is very difficult because it doesn't flow in some kind of orderly manner. It's just very confusing. I found the same kind of thing with somewhat with the history of Buddhism and the history of Taoism. That along the way, they just gather other ideas and other teachers come along, and there's different teachers. And so you can follow different teachers and have different beliefs. And then some things get incorporated into a larger kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, a system. And then that system goes on, but then it has all these other things. I mean, it just, whenever you get into these areas of spiritual beliefs outside Christianity, unless it's a very clear-cut thing that goes by something, like a book and says, okay, here are the beliefs. For example, I'm not saying it's not uncomplicated, but like the history of the Mormon church, you can get a history, you can get certain people and timelines and go by that and go inside kind of an orderly manner as to how it developed and who the leaders were and what their teachings were. You can't do that with like witchcraft or the new age or anything that I deal with, but witchcraft in particular was was really difficult because researching it was hard. You had to look at a lot of different sources. And I mean, I used pro witchcraft sources as well as kind of scholarly sources outside witchcraft. So it was just putting that article, even though I have spoken about witchcraft since 1995, I've spoken about it. And I have an article on my website I wrote years ago. I didn't go really into the history of it. You know, I would just give this very brief overview because most people just wanted to hear about the beliefs. You know,
What would you say is kind of like the core of it? I'll tell you what I think. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. And
okay.
it seems to me, and you know, witchcraft is almost like designated towards women, and then but men do it too. And then there's like the warlocks, and isn't that kind of the male counterpart? But it seems to me like the heart of it is control. They're trying to control, you know, they're trying to put curses on people. They're trying to control things.
No, that's not, no, you're not right. No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe it's good you said that because probably a lot of people maybe
I don't know anything. That's why I'm talking to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of good you said that because that's how a lot of people think about it when they hear the word witchcraft. They think exactly what you said, all those things, which are the first part of what you said is partly true, or true to an extent. So first of all, witchcraft, it's a word with a lot of baggage, right? So it brings a lot of things to people's minds when they hear it. It's just been used so often in, for example, movies or whatever, and you have a lot of kind of Hollywood type ideas floating around out there in the culture. The main thing I would say to think of when you hear about modern witchcraft, the main thing to think about would be nature and the earth. Okay, nature and the earth are sacred in witchcraft. They're totally oriented towards nature. Also, it's important to know witchcraft is kind of a subcategory of a larger category, neo-paganism. And you can't really talk about witchcraft without talking about neo-paganism. So neo-paganism is the larger category, and it's really just means kind of a revival of ancient paganism, although it's not completely true to ancient paganism, but it's the revival. So you have the belief in many gods, for example. You have maybe rituals that are done. They're usually nature-oriented type rituals that go along with the seasons. So there are people who are in neo-paganism or some form of neo-paganism who do not identify with witchcraft. But you have the Druids, the kind of the revival of Druidry, which started in the UK and is much stronger there than in the United States. But there are people here who follow Druidry, which for whatever reason seems to attract men more than women. Then you have, and they're very oriented towards trees. Then you have just the goddess worshipers. And so now they can fall into subcategories. So you have the Dianic worshipers, they worship Diana. Okay, the huntress goddess, the goddess of the hunt, and the woods, and again, back to nature here. You have people who worship a goddess, like it could be Freya, which comes from Norse paganism. And in fact, you have Norse paganism as another subcategory of neo-paganism. So there's a whole group of people into Norse paganism, and where the god is usually Odin, okay, Odin, who's a Norse god. Now this really does go back to like the Vikings, who these were the gods of the Vikings, Odin and Freya, who's the goddess. So you have people that follow that. And in that category, you have a subcategory, a subculture of white supremacy. A lot of white supremacists supremacists are drawn to Odinism or Norse paganism because it exalts what they see as the white race. Okay, so there's a subcategory of that. Not everybody in that is a white supremacist, but you definitely have that, especially, I don't know if this is still true, but at one time that was very true in the prison population. So you had a lot of prisoners who followed Odinism in the prison. It kind of spread in the prison. So now see, you can see how big this category is. The reason I'm doing this is so people kind of get witchcraft in context. And it's in context of as a subcategory of all of these other categories under neo-paganism. And so those are all different areas that one can explore. And then you have witchcraft, and then you have Wicca. And I have to really talk about both of them at the same time, because even though they're not exactly the same for most people, there is kind of a difference. Wicca has a very specific beginning in that it began with a man named Gerald Gardner in the UK in probably the late 1940s or the 1940s, but it became sort of official around 1950.
Modern.
Yeah, it's modern. It's very modern. And Gerald Gardner was somebody who studied under different kinds of teachings, occult teachings. He was interested in the occult. I think he was in Freemasonry. He was involved in just different teachings. Now he claimed, and here's where you begin to get the confusion. He claimed that he was initiated into witchcraft by these witches in the woods. Okay, there's a certain area of woods, and it's got a name, and now the names escape me, but I know what it is. Maybe it'll come to me later. And he says he was in those woods and the witches initiated him. Well, that's never been verified. And it's probably not true. Okay. Says there probably weren't anybody calling themselves witches.
He just made it up.
Yeah, he probably just made it up. And most of these founders of these types of groups make up a lot of things.
Like Joseph Smith and the Golden Tablets. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're always just making stuff up.
You have these people who start these new religions or new groups, and often at least part of what they're saying is something they made up. Gurdjieff did the same thing. Gurdjieff that formed the shape of came up with the Enneagram shape. Okay. He made a lot of claims that were unverified. So
he brags about back to that video that I saw of him bragging about it.
Yeah, I mean, that video? No, that was Claudio Naranjo. That's okay. Somebody else. That was about the types and the information coming from automatic writing. Gurdjieff is the one who came up in 1916. I mean, he died in the late 40s. Late 1940s. Okay. with the Enneagram shape. He didn't teach it for personality, but he used it for spiritual teaching. So that's who I'm talking about. Okay. Yeah, but Naranjo too. Yeah, Naranjo claimed the Enneagram was ancient, and he admits in that video he made it up. So this is where you run into these problems, because they'll make these claims and everybody believes them, and then you've got more confusion. So Gerald Gardner made this claim about the witches initiating him, and he started teaching what he called Wicca, and he had followers, of course. He actually got quite a few followers. And one of those followers came to the United States around 1963 or 1964 and started up the same kind of groups here. So that's how Wicca got transplanted to the United States. And then it, kind of flourished from there. And it split into two groups. So there were those who followed Gerald Gardner's teachings, but there was another man who split from Gardner, who started his own groups. And so the followers of that man follow his teachings, which are not exactly like Gerald Gardner's. So you even have kind of back near the beginning, a split in Wicca into two different groups. And then in the United States, it developed on its own. So of course you have people today who identify with Wicca. They believe that, most of them believe it is an ancient religion. They think it comes from ancient witchcraft religions. or maybe goddess religions. So the goddess is very big in Wicca. Now you have witchcraft, and you could put Wicca under the category of witchcraft, or you could put it separately. You could
I
really
ask you, where does all of this, is there any truth to any of this Hollywood stuff where they use a rabbit's foot and a twig from a tree and make a potion? Or is that just all Hollywood?
I don't know about the rabbit's foot, but they the idea of making potions, magical potions, they do that. I mean, but it's more likely to be herbs. They put herbs together rather than maybe, I mean, maybe they would do a liquid potion. I
My
really
education on witchcraft comes from Bugs Bunny.
Oh, well,
You know, I mean, I got a lot of it. You know, we're raised, we grow up that witches are kind of these silly, kind of fun people who are a little strange.
oh, really? I was raised thinking that it was evil.
Yeah, well, you were raised correctly then.
I don't know. Maybe I'm probably older than you, so maybe in the next X number of years down, it was more of a funny thing, because I think you were more likely as time went by to come across it in cartoons or
Well,
children's
the Wizard of
books.
Oz. And
Yes, you have
that,
the good witch Glenda, right? The good witch is she
yeah, and then the
of
bad witch.
north
So
or the south? I can't remember, but there's a good witch and a bad witch in the Wizard of Oz. You're right, and that was written. Frank Baum, I think is his name, wrote the Wizard of Oz. He was a follower of Theosophy, which is I'm not going to try to go into that now, but Theosophy was a kind of a group based kind of on Hinduism and occultism, started
who
by
founded that?
Madame Blavatsky,
Yeah, that's right.
like around
Blavatsky.
1870 or so,
Yep.
along with another guy.
Yeah. I've read up a little bit on that.
So, but anyway, aside from that, you've got these cultural representations of witchcraft in the field of entertainment, most of which are not very accurate.
So what are these people trying to get out of these beliefs? What do they get out of it? What's in it for them other than going to hell?
Well, no, they don't believe in hell, and they don't believe in Satan, and they believe in nature. I mean, really, we're back to nature. Okay, nature is sacred. You have to connect with nature. Believe that everybody, now they're different beliefs. I can't give you a single set of beliefs for witchcraft. It's all over the place.
Sure.
But basically they believe either that, you have sort of an inner energy or power that you can use, or you can connect with some kind of energy or power in nature.
Secret knowledge.
Or with a spirit, like an elemental. The elementals are the spirits of nature, and they can be very big in some forms of witchcraft. Or you can call on the goddess or some other deity that you might believe in. Now, not all people who follow Wicca and witchcraft are polytheists, because a lot of them are duotheists, which is two gods. So they'll believe in the goddess and her consort. But a lot of them do believe in different gods, or probably more prevalent than that is the belief in the nature spirits.
So
so that they try to connect with those.
Do you see this stuff creeping into the church?
Okay, not the basic beliefs of witchcraft. I don't see people in the church, but wanting to do rituals in the woods, with the goddess or something like that. I don't see that, generally speaking, in the evangelical church, certainly not. But you have practices that could be that are aligned with witchcraft beliefs in the church, in alternative healing. Alternative healing is almost all occultic. This is my biggest battle. Okay, my biggest battle in my ministry is alternative healing. It has been that way from day one, going back to the 1990s.
What is alternative healing?
Alternative healing is healing that is not medical. It's not it's not based on medicine, research, studies, hard data, objective truth, nothing. It's it's just out there. A lot of it is New Age. A lot of it comes from Taoism, okay, which is an ancient Chinese religion.
Yeah, and
That's
there, like,
acupuncture is based on Taoism.
sure. And Bethel Church in Redmond, California, they have a healing center. And it's
Yeah,
but they shut it down during COVID because they couldn't
yeah.
they
Kind of
couldn't heal anybody from COVID. But
that's a good reason. I like the way you said that. I don't know if they shut down because they had to, they were told to, or they were afraid it would spread, or is it because they knew they couldn't heal anybody? So they just like, okay, we're going to shut it down.
no, they shut down the healing center because of COVID. I'm like, well,
yeah, kind of like, aren't you the healing center?
See, that's what I mean. People get into these things because they want to get something back out of it. And
yes,
that,
yes,
and I'm not saying that that's inherently wrong. It might be a little
right,
misguided,
right.
but like, I don't go to God because I want something from God other than maybe eternal life. That's my hope. That's the hope that I have. But in this world,
that's a sure hope. You're assured of that, because when you trust in Christ, you are regenerated and you have eternal life from that moment on.
But
so you already have eternal life.
Right. But I don't go to God to have power over other people or to control other people,
right,
or anything like that. To me, it's just very personal. That's why I'm saying, people get into these religions like Eve. She was tempted with the secret knowledge to be like God. There was something in that story for her. There was something in it for her that she wanted. And that the serpent came to her and said, hey, I got something great for you. This will improve your life. This will better your life. And that's what I'm thinking. It's like, people, what do they get out of it? Is it peace? Do they get inner peace? Do they get, and that's why I thought of control.
In witchcraft, okay, you get a feeling, first of all, now there are people who practice by themselves. They're solitary practitioners and they aren't in a group, but a lot of people in witchcraft and Wicca are in groups. So you get a community. That is one of the number one things that they'll say they like about it, is community. Okay. And they feel accepted in that community. Sometimes people who go to Wicca or witchcraft are people who don't fit in society. Now, I don't want to give the impression that everybody in Wicca and witchcraft is a misfit. Okay, I don't want to give that impression, because that's wrong. Because
we're all misfits,
and it's not true. Well, people who really don't fit in. You go back to high school and think about the kids who didn't fit in, and it changes with different generations. Sure. In one generation they're called freaks, and another generation they're like the punks or something,
nerds,
or the people with the red hair and the piercings, and the tattoos. So you've got people who deliberately who don't feel a part of the mainstream culture, and sometimes deliberately set themselves apart in some way. Yeah. Well, in Wicca and witchcraft, you're accepted. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what your sexuality is. Okay. So it has attracted a lot of people in, the gay, the LGBTQ community.
So other than
other people who don't fit in. Now that there's an attraction there because they're accepted. And I have to tell you that now I knew a lot of Wiccans and witches as an astrologer. So I'm not just talking about this like it's something I've read about, but gotcha. I knew a lot. I was an astrologer for a lot of Wiccans.
You were on the front lines right there in it.
Well, yeah, I was. And I even went to a couple of witchcraft retreats. So I went both times. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, both times I think my husband at the time was with me, and we were the only non-witches. So, so I had a lot of interaction. Plus, since I've been in my ministry, Christian Answers for the New Age, I have come across a lot of Wiccans and witches and talked to a lot of them face to face and online. And on my my Cana page, I have had some come there, and I've had a contact from a lot of former Wiccans and witches who are now Christians. So I had contact with this community for like years and years and years, because I was an astrologer in the 1980s. So we're going back quite a ways here.
Mhm.
which makes me sound really old, like, oh my gosh, Marcia, you were doing that in the 1980s. I wasn't even born then. You know, I could just hear people saying that. So so anyway, or I was like in elementary school or something like that. Anyway, so no, I was an adult and I was doing my thing there. So what I have seen just personally from these people is that generally speaking, they're very nice people. They are very, very nice. They just are. I mean, why? I don't know. They just happen to be nice people. I have found that to be very true. They're very welcoming.
Absolutely.
They just are. I'm not saying they're laid. I don't want to use the word laid back, because that's a person, you know, some people are laid back, some people aren't. But they just tend to be very nice and
They
welcoming.
are. And before I forget, I want to bring up the subject of like celebrities and some of the things I've seen. Like Beyonce claims to be possessed by a spirit when she's on stage.
When you're getting ready to go on stage and perform, does Sasha Fierce, when does she show up?
Usually when I hear the crowd, when I
Yeah.
put on my stilettos, when like the moment right before when you're nervous and that other thing kind of takes over for you.
Oh, has she said that?
Oh yeah. And you know, Katy Perry, watch
Yeah.
the
There's a
Oprah
few
interview.
singers. Yeah, there's a few singers that I can't remember if it's Katy Perry or another one. There's another very popular woman singer. I think maybe this was going 10 years or so back, and I can't think of her name, who had witchcraft themes in her songs, because I think she was into it, but I can't think of her name.
Well, did you see the Katy Perry halftime
Katy
show?
Perry?
Is a woman rides the beast, basically. You know, it's very cultish and very witchcrafty in the
Okay.
music industry. It's everywhere. And that's where I come from. You know, I come from that.
Yeah. Now, some people use that to be provocative. Some people are really into it. Other performers, you know, might be really into it. Others use it as a provocative kind of guise.
Oh yeah, Beyonce
over
said, oh
time.
yeah, her spirit's name is Sasha, that she gets possessed by.
Okay, so she's not just saying this, you don't think, to sound
Oh
provocative.
no,
but
her and
you truly
Oprah,
believe-
her and Oprah go into a discussion about it, what it's like, and it's
I
like
would like-
cool and hip and trendy.
I would like to know where she's coming from, because that's not witchcraft.
Mhm.
That's not witchcraft. So, you know, witchcraft is not the idea you're going to be possessed by a spirit. In fact, you know, they don't talk usually, generally speaking, about spirits very much, although they do believe that there are bad spirits, most of them. But that's not their thing. So, you know, they're focused on nature and maybe the goddess and the elementals. And by practicing witchcraft, not only are you part of a community, but you are doing something in the here and now with the energies of the universe, with your energy, with the energies of the universe, of nature. And they believe very much in this harmonizing, you know, kind of will bring peace if we can harmonize with nature. So that's more where, you know, witchcraft and Wicca is coming from.
Yeah, that's very interesting to me. So they're like Mother Earth.
Yeah. Now they do almost, not all of them, but some of them will do spell casting. But
Okay.
generally speaking, that's done for healing. It might be done for something that they want to do. It's usually not done for bad purposes,
What
because
about,
they believe that if whatever you do comes back to you 3 times. So if you do something bad, if you try to do something bad to someone, it's going to come back on you. Like a lot of them believe that. Here again, I can't talk about a universal belief.
I know,
talk
yeah.
about beliefs that some of them have. And I'm saying this purposely because somebody listening to this, you know, when I post this on my pages, I may have people who are actually in Wicca and witchcraft listening to this. So
Well-
you know, in fact, I probably will. So I want to be very accurate, because the first thing Christians should know about this, the very first thing they should know, is that you need to be accurate about it, and don't fill your head with stereotypes about Wicca and witchcraft and then blurt that out like that's the truth. Okay, so that's one, you're actually harming your witness as a Christian. You're harming your Christian witness when you do that, and I see a lot of that.
Well, you've
So,
already
for
set me
example,
straight about 5 times, so.
Wicca and witchcraft, I have done that. That's true. Well, thank you for being so gracious about it, Matt. Wicca and witchcraft. Okay, so they don't believe, this is, you know, this is their idea, main idea. They don't believe in doing harm. Do no harm, do what you will. That was a motto that Gerald Gardner came up with. Now,
Yeah,
he got it from Aleister Crowley.
Right, that's what I was just gonna say.
Who said, I knew you would know about Aleister Crowley.
Of course,
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin.
Aleister Crowley, who, just for those who don't know who that is, he was this very infamous person. He was born in the late 19th century, but lived into the 20th century. He was a very provocative person. I mean, he was not a quiet, shy wallflower. He was out there, and he purposely tried to appear evil. He called himself the Beast. You know, he had been raised in a very, very strict Brethren household, and so he apparently rebelled against that. And he became this very out there kind of evil figure, but he was not into witchcraft, and he was not a Satanist. There's a very, very popular idea about him being a Satanist, and he was not. He was into ritual magic. That was his thing, was ritual magic. Now, the reason people connect him to Satanism is that his little motto was do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, which he claimed to get from his spirit guide. And I believe it. He probably had a spirit guide, and he probably got that from the spirit guide, because that sounds exactly like something a spirit guide would say. So in other words, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. What that means is your will should reign supreme over anybody's will. Okay, so that's the idea of that. Now, Gerald Gardner met and actually knew Aleister Crowley, and he took do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law and changed it to do what thou wilt and do no harm, or, you know, do what you will, do no harm. That is a motto that most people in Wicca and witchcraft believe in. Now, here's the problem with it. What do you base harm on? How do you determine what's harmful? There's no absolutes, okay? In Wicca and witchcraft, there's no absolute truth. So if you don't have any absolutes, but you believe in do no harm, what are you going to base it? I actually asked some witches this question one time.
Well,
And the way I posed it was, I said, what if you were in India and you were in what village that still practices widow burning, where this was something that they used to do, that when the British came in, they made it illegal. So you put, the widow goes on the funeral pyre of her dead husband, alive. Okay. I said, what if you were in a village and you saw them doing that? Would you think that was okay? And they said no. Now this is a actual dialogue I had with some people in Wicca and witchcraft. And they said, well, no. And I said, well, why not? Because if they think it's a good thing, and in their spiritual tradition, they think this should be done, maybe even the widow thinks it should be done, then who are you to say it's wrong? On what's your basis? Now, see, they don't have a basis. Their basis is that they think it's wrong. That's something you wouldn't do in this country.
Well, then it's just their own conscience and the parameters of their own conscience is.
Well, it's just, yeah, it's whatever, it's determined subjectively. Sure. What is right and wrong. And that was the point I was trying to make. And I was trying to contrast that with Christianity, where we do have absolute truth, where, you know, there are things that are absolutely true, and good and evil or have parameters. They have.
Yeah, but that's what people don't like about Christianity.
Well, exactly. They don't like it. And that's another reason people are attracted to Wicca and witchcraft. I found when I was an astrologer, most of my clients who were into Wicca and witchcraft had been raised in Christian homes. Now, were the homes truly Christian? I don't know. But from what they told me, that there were two situations that were the most common. One was it was very legalistic. They were either in a family that was very legalistic or in a church that was very legalistic. Like, you can't wear a short skirt, you can't play certain kinds of music. This legalism
Right.
predominated. Or they were in a home where they went to churches like on special occasions, or you went through the motions, but it didn't mean anything, kind of dead churches. So
Right.
they seem to mostly come from those kind of churches, and neither one of those is Christianity.
Right.
But they thought that was Christianity.
That label gets thrown on a lot of different things where it doesn't belong.
Right. And I mean, I remember talking to somebody who had left, who had been in church and done all this stuff. And, and I said, well, do you know, the thing is that the thing to do, if you're talking to somebody like this, I always suggest if you're talking to someone in Wicca or witchcraft, ask them what their spiritual background is. Were you raised in a certain spiritual or religious kind of tradition? And what was it? Were they Mormon? Were they, was it Christian? Was it Jewish? Whatever. Because it can give you some insight. Now, if they say Christian, I like to ask them, well, why did you leave it? Why are you rejecting that? Because you'll really get a big insight in their answer. Because they might say, well, I don't believe in all these rules that you have to follow to go to heaven. Okay.
They don't like
So
the
right
rules.
away, you can
Sure.
say, wait a minute, that's not Christianity. That's not the gospel, because you can't do anything to get into heaven. It's like, that's not because I thought that when I was in high school, I thought you had to be good to get into heaven. Now, how I got that idea, I don't know, but that was my idea. And that's one reason, there were others, why I rejected Christianity in high school. So it's always good to ask that question. Also, you might get a surprising answer. Let me give you an example where I asked somebody in Wicca if he had a Christian background. He said yes, and I said, what was it? And he said Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh yeah.
I said, actually, that's not a Christian background. I said, that's not Christianity. I said, I hope you understand that Christianity does not accept Jehovah's Witnesses as part of Christianity, because they deny the Trinity, they deny the deity of Christ, so anyway, so it's always good to ask these questions and get a little idea of where they're coming from. And that is often part of what drew them into Wicca or witchcraft.
Well,
So
you
they
know what?
wanted something spiritual, but they wanted to get away from what they thought was Christianity.
I did that. I ran away from Christianity.
Okay.
I was a guy who was on the worship team.
Oh.
So I was there every time. This is in my 20s, and I won't give you all the gory details, but I just walked away from all of it, because the way what happened was I started studying the Bible on my own. That's what happened. And I would go to church and say, this is not biblical. What's going on here is not biblical. What they're teaching is not biblical.
Wow.
And then I would start bringing these up, and I'd be told, shh, don't be talking about grace, in that way, because then you're just talking about a license to sin. I'm like, a license to sin? What's that? And it just kind of went on and on and on. But eventually I just threw it all away. And
Were they legalistic? Kind of legalistic, or not giving the gospel in the right
yeah,
way?
very, very much.
Okay.
No, don't smoke, don't drink.
Yeah.
Be goody
For
goody
these
two
rules,
shoes.
you have to follow. Yeah.
Yeah, the same stuff that you were just talking about.
Yeah.
And when I found out that I was being honest, they would judge me and I would be an outcast.
Yeah. Well, see, that happened. That's the background of a lot of these people that go into Wicca and witchcraft.
But
They, and of course, a lot of people that go through what you describe and who experience what I experienced don't necessarily go. And I didn't go into Wicca and witchcraft, but you could just become maybe an atheist or something like that. Or
I could have done a lot of things, but I was saved. See, this is my theory.
Oh,
okay. It didn't matter because I believed. I was like a true believer. And even though I walked away from God and walked away from the Bible, walked away from the church and started down the road of cocaine, promiscuous sex, and rock and roll.
Oh,
That
so
didn't mean
that's
that,
what you went in. That's what you went into. That
yeah,
was
but that
your
didn't
religion.
mean that I wasn't saved. I was saved.
No, I'm not saying you weren't, but
I know,
you
but
went into a completely different lifestyle
I went
because of
I
what
went
you
into
experienced in church.
thy will is the whole of the law is what I went into, kind of. So
Yeah. Well,
in a
I
nutshell,
wasn't saved when I rejected Christianity. I had never been saved.
I
So
think
I lived all my adult life without being a Christian until God did intervene. And I was, I had a 9-year-old son when that happened. I was older.
wow.
So you were saved. I wasn't saved, and that can happen. It can happen. Both cases can happen. You can be saved in a church and walk away, and you cannot be saved and walk away. Now, most of these people in Wiccan witchcraft, I do not think are saved. And
Probably not.
Yeah.
And if they are, they're going to come back like I did.
Yes. Yeah.
What
And
happened to
actually,
me?
I'm
I
sorry,
spent about 10 years doing my own thing.
okay.
You know,
Okay.
going off the rails. You know, but I was always I'm a nice guy. You know, I'm personable. I'm somewhat intelligent, and I just go about my life and do whatever I kind of did. But then one day I thought, you know what? I'm going to go buy a Bible, and I'm going to just give this one more look. And I was in my
Oh,
this was about 20 years ago. I was in my mid 30s, and
okay.
I went out and I bought a Schofield Reference Bible. I don't know if you've
Huh.
ever read one of those, but
Yeah, I had a Schofield Bible.
yeah. And I started reading it saying, okay, I'm back. It was just that simple. It's like when I started taking responsibility for my own doctrine that I understood to be Christian, what the word is telling me is really a Christian,
Right. Right.
not what the church told me when I was there, because
Yeah.
the church just basically chewed me up and spit me out.
Right.
And I walked away, and many people do. So, but
Yeah. And it's very unfortunate. That's, you have churches that end up alienating people because they're not really teaching biblically. Their teachings aren't biblical.
well, what
And
brought me back to you was my church in this Enneagram business.
oh yeah.
I saw it again, Marcia. It's like I see it again. I go to church. I've always joked about my spiritual gifts. I say, yeah, I have a spiritual gift. I can walk into a church and see everything that's wrong with it. Oh, you're just critical, you're just not loving.
Maybe that's discernment. You're being discerning, right?
It is because I've read my Bible so much on my own without having somebody hit my ear with what it means. I don't need anyone really to tell me what it means. I mean, I love teachings, and I went to Koinonia House, studied under Chuck Missler. I had good teaching, but still, none of that meant anything until I grabbed my Bible for myself and started to read it. Just read it, not even study it, just read it.
Right. Well, and of course, we're as Christians, the God's word is our spiritual food. So we really need to be in it. We really do, because when you're not in it, you can begin to drift, and you can get, into spiritual deception, or just as a person, you become a not so great person. I mean, really, it's really important. I mean, I can tell the difference if I haven't read the Bible for a while, and versus when I'm trying to read it every day, and really study it. I can tell the difference in myself. And that's because it's our spiritual food. So we do need it. And Jesus said, isn't that what he said to Satan, when Satan in the 3 temptations in the wilderness, Satan tells him to turn the stone into bread, right? Because he knows Jesus can do this. And Jesus knows he can do it. But he's like, no, man shall not live by bread alone, but, by every word that comes from God. That's Marcia's paraphrase. So,
Sounds pretty close.
yeah. So, that's, what he's saying, you're living by God's word. That's what we need to be living by. And so that's very true.
And I'm sorry, but you don't have to break out the Greek to understand what that's saying.
Well, right, you don't. Now, I think it's helpful.
Pretty plain.
I think it's helpful to know. I mean, I don't know Greek or Hebrew. I had an overview of biblical languages in seminary. That was an overview. We learned the alphabet. We learned how the languages functioned, but we didn't actually learn the languages. But that was very helpful, what I learned. And sometimes I will look up a word. I look up words in lexicons to see. Sometimes I'm checking on something somebody has said, and they'll say, well, that, that's what that verse means. And then I'll say, well, I don't know. I don't really think that word means what they're saying it means. I'm going to check it out, and maybe they're right and maybe they're not right, but I check it out for myself. So sometimes it's helpful to know how to use a lexicon. But yeah, I mean, I don't feel I need to know Greek to, study the Bible and really do what it
Oh,
says.
that's my point is,
Yeah.
We can read it and much of it's very clear and very plain.
Yeah.
So-
And yeah, definitely. The main messages in there are very clear. And so, and I tell this to people when they talk about, oh, Christians disagreeing and everything. I'm like, we're disagreeing on secondary issues. The main issues, which are very clear in the Bible, and there's no arguing about it, are the essentials of the faith. Who God is, who Jesus is, why he came, why he died on the cross, what happens when you put your faith in Christ, how to have eternal life. The essentials we're all united on, whether you're whatever church you're in.
Okay,
Believe
now
in those things, you're united in Christ. And I want to make a point here that I meant to make at the very beginning, which I didn't. But that's okay, because we were talking about some important things there. The word witchcraft is not in the Bible. People need to know that, because some witches know this. And so let's say you have this evangelical Christian finds out her coworker's a witch, and she decides to have a dialogue with her to witness to her. And the first thing this woman says, let's say it's a woman coworker, says to her is, well, the word witchcraft is not in Hebrew. It's not in your Bible. And so this Christian who thinks it's there and has read it is like, all of a sudden she's like frozen. She didn't know what to say, right? It's
imagine.
like, unless she says you're wrong, and then she would be wrong to tell the witch she's wrong. Okay.
But what about synonymous?
So let me clear this matter up. So I know everyone out there is saying, but I've seen it in my Bible. That word is there. Okay. I know it's there in some translations. It's there. And the reason it's there is because the Hebrew words are translated according to, what would the English word be at the particular time that it's being translated. Witchcraft is also a generic term just for the practice of certain occult activities, even in other languages. For example, when you read about, for a while there, I haven't heard about this lately, but in Africa, there was all this stuff about the witches who were killing young boys to get their brains or their blood or something for these spells. Well, and they were called witches, but that's not witchcraft, unless you're just using it in a generic sense for occult. That was more sorcery. So what they were doing was sorcery. Sorcery and witchcraft are not the same thing. They're not the same thing. And in fact, witches usually will say sorcery is bad. They usually don't. They don't like sorcery. Okay, so, witches and witchcraft and sorcery is not the same thing, but the generic term witchcraft, I think it's in the King James Bible, didn't mean Wicca and witchcraft, because Wicca and witchcraft are modern movements that started in the 20th century. So the King James was translated in the 17th century. And that's in the 17th century in England, even though they had ideas of witches, which were all wrong, that they flew on brooms and they communed with the devil. And that came from a book that was completely made up during the Inquisition, I think. So you have that idea. But when they say witchcraft, they mean doing things like you can cast spells and not be a witch. See? So
sorcery.
What you're doing is sorcery. Yeah, it's more sorcery. So if you look in other Bibles, for example, in some Bibles, they'll, King Saul went to the witch of Endor.
Right.
In other Bibles, he went to the medium of Endor.
Right.
And medium is probably a more accurate word, because that describes what she did, which was
divination,
to bring back the dead. Yeah, that's a medium, communicating with the dead. But in some Bibles, it was witchcraft, because doing communication with the dead or calling up the dead was seen as witchcraft. And so that word was translated for the Hebrew word. And So, and actually all of the words, if you go to Deuteronomy 18, 9 through 12, is a passage where God is forbidding certain pagan practices. And all of these practices are what we call the occult. Of course, God doesn't use the word the occult. I mean, that's not in the Bible, but these are all practices of the occult listed in verses 10 and 11. And you'll read in different Bibles, like if you read it in the King James and you read it in the NIV, a lot of the words are going to be very different, very different. I usually use the New American Standard. I also have the Christian Standard Bible, and I have an ESV, and I have a New King James. And they all, I'm sorry, whoops, I'm moving around here. They all have different words. A lot of times they won't say the same thing. So I have to get comfortable again, sorry. So I just want people to know that I actually, in my book Spellbound, which you mentioned, I based that book on that passage of scripture.
Okay.
And in the first chapters, I go through the Hebrew terms because I actually researched all of the Hebrew words for those practices listed in verses 10 and 11 of Deuteronomy 18. And I explain what they are. And in modern terms, what does this mean? And then I give examples, and the rest of the book is giving examples of those things where we see them in the
Right.
culture and how to recognize them.
It's-
So that
sounds
it's
like
very
it's
important for people to understand that.
It sounds like it's become just kind of an umbrella term.
Witchcraft?
Yeah, that people just kind of throw around. I mean,
Well, yeah.
I've learned
Yeah.
a lot just talking to you because, you know, I have not studied this. I don't know much about it. I've met a lot of mostly women, a few men who claim to be Wiccans and into witchcraft and stuff like that. I really don't know much about it. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, and it can be thrown around, and I've actually used it in the generic sense sometimes with the, I make a differentiation. If I'm talking about it as the belief, as groups of people believing in it and calling themselves witches, I usually use a capital W. But if I use a small w and witchcraft, I mean, it's some kind of practice of the occult. So if you're doing something that is an occultic activity that is akin to occult magic, which is sorcery, I might call it witchcraft. So, for example, I say homeopathy is based on witchcraft beliefs. And
Yeah.
it is. And the homeopathy is very big in the church. I don't know if you know that. I mean,
what's homeopathy?
Homeopathy is everybody thinks, oh, it's all about, natural medicine or something. That's not what it's about. It's a belief. It comes from a man named Hahnemann, who was a follower of a belief system called vitalism, which you could classify as witchcraft, because vitalism is a belief that there's an energy in nature and in the world, a life-giving, healing energy that you can tap into. Now, this is and it flows in the plants. And Hahnemann believed that certain plants, you could tap into the energy of these plants for healing. And that's what he taught. But it developed from there into this idea that if you dilute it, the more you dilute the original ingredient, which is supposed to be he believes it's an ingredient that is going to cause what actually your symptoms are. So if you have a cough, you're supposed to take an ingredient that is supposed to cause coughing. Okay, this is the idea behind it. Like cures like, which really comes from sympathetic magic. So it really does go back to sorcery. So you take this ingredient, but they found when they used the ingredient that it actually did make people sicker. So they had to dilute it. So then the belief became the more you dilute it, the more potent it is. So homeopathic remedies, most of them are so diluted that there's nothing left of the original ingredient and what you're paying for. And the homeopathic remedies are not cheap. You can find them in the drugstore here in this state, which is atrocious. I actually complained about it to a pharmacist because I went in looking for a remedy for some either eardrops or eye drops. And I saw this package. I was looking at partly at the prices because these kind of products are not cheap. And I picked one up because it looked like it might be good. It looked like what I wanted. And then I looked at the box more closely and I saw it was homeopathic, because the way you can tell is you go to the back. Sometimes it'll say homeopathic, but you go to the back and it'll have, if it has a number with an X by it, that shows the dilution. So if it's
Okay.
20X, it shows it's like diluted. It's not 20 times, it's more than 20 times. I forgot what it is, like 2,000 times or something.
Some of them
ridiculous.
build their brand around this too, the X.
Yes, Highland, I think Hyland is a big homeopathic brand. They have a lot of things.
X1, X2.
Yeah, and
I've
you
seen
look,
that.
and a lot of popular remedies that you hear about. There was a big remedy that was very popular for colds. I think it had the word Z in it because it supposedly had zinc in it. It was a homeopathic remedy. So you're basically just, you might just take that $20 bill that you were going to pay for that homeopathic bottle of whatever, just take it and go throw it down the street. Go ahead, because whether you throw it in the street or you buy the product, it's the same thing. You know, that's what I tell people, just take your money and go throw it in the street, or, you know, whatever, go throw it down a gutter, because that's the same thing as you paying for that product. You're getting absolutely nothing with your money. It's such a scam. And so when I saw this homeopathic remedy next to an actual remedy that I was looking for, I took it up to the pharmacist and I said, why is this homeopathic stuff? And she knew what homeopathic was. Of course,
Yeah.
they know, the pharmacist knows. Why is it sold right next to real remedies? They should have it in its own little category under homeopathy. So, and then maybe an explanation of what it is, so people know what they're buying. And she said, yeah, and of course, you know, as an employee, she can't really, you know, say, yeah, that's terrible, they do that, because I mean, she works for them. So she said, yeah, I know. I mean, I could tell that she sympathized with me. And I said, this is just atrocious. I said, I think I came back and made a post on Facebook about it because I was so mad.
Why
I
are
was
you
like mad for 3 days over that.
why are you such a troublemaker? It's my
I
next
know,
question.
I know. Somebody who's interviewed me for a program, and I'm going to be on his program again. Actually, it's him and his brother. I've been on their program a few times. He calls me the I'm this what is that when you like rain on somebody's parade? I forgot what is the word for it, like your killjoy. It's another term. He tells me I'm like the spiritual killjoy or something like that. Because it's like, Marcia, here everybody's enjoying this, and here you come along and you're like, no, this is bad.
That is the problem I had at Bible studies.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Pointing out something that isn't correct, that everybody was promoting or thinking was
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So
So
well,
yeah.
what are
But
your
you know, this is like, oh, we should probably do you want to get back to witchcraft, or do you?
yeah, I was gonna say we should probably focus on a little wrap up here, but I want you to just kind of give us some of the other bullet points you were thinking you wanted to bring out.
Okay. Yeah. So another thing to remember is witchcraft is not Satanism, and actually witches and Satanists really despise each other. Satanists think that witches are goody goodies because they're trying to do good. They want to use their powers for good,
Right.
or their magic for good. And Satanists look down on anybody that is trying to be good. So they view Christians and witches kind of the same way. They're both trying to be good.
And some Satanists are trying to go mainstream.
Well, that if you're talking, that's a whole other. I'm actually going to do a program on Satanism with somebody in a few weeks, but that's a whole other thing. The Satanic Temple, that's a category unto itself. It's not really Satanism.
Yeah, I'll have to
There are
watch
some
that.
Satanists in it, but it's not really Satanism. Okay, they actually have goals that they think are good, like helping people, and
Yeah, they do. That's
kind
what
of
I saw.
advocates for social justice.
Right.
Okay, real Satanism doesn't do that. Satanism doesn't believe in trying to help other people and do something for the common good. They don't believe that, because that is, if you do that, you're being subservient to the moral order that has been set up by society. And that is, for a Satanist, that's completely wrong. Okay, you don't submit to, I mean, of course you have to live within the law unless you want to go to prison, but they don't believe in submitting to these ideas of morality out there in the culture that most people, generally speaking, believe are good. So anyway, so witches don't like Satanists because the Satanists use the pentagram, and the witches say the Satanists stole our pentagram. So there's a whole thing on the pentagram.
Infighting.
Most witches use it with 1 point up, and
Okay.
Satanists use it with, you turn it upside down, it has 2 points up.
Yep.
And so that's one difference in how they use it, but it's still a pentagram. And so a lot of witches are very upset because people associate the pentagram, some associate it with Satanism. And they're like, no, we're not Satanists. We don't
Some
worship
do. I
Satan,
think
we don't
almost
believe in Satan.
I think almost everybody associates the pentagram with Satanism.
Yes, and that's a problem because the people who use it the most are the witches and Wiccans. They use it a lot more than the Satanists. So there are Satanists. Satanists actually are not into symbols. People, this is another bad idea Christians have. They think that people in the occult are so into symbols and communicate with symbols. That's not true. They don't communicate with hand signals or, I had I do different profile pictures on my page. I don't have that picture. I just like to change it. Usually it's from art. And I had this picture that by an artist I liked his style, and it's the woman had her hand like this. I don't know why, but it was just kind of like this,
Oh boy, I bet you caught all kinds of.
Oh my gosh, I was called a Satanist. I got messages on the Cana page, and I was told, you're just pretending to be a Christian, you're really a Satanist. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, yes, I have spent 23 years in full-time ministry, living on donations. But I'm really a Satanist, but I've spent 23 years living on donations as a missionary.
Well, they say that's
everybody.
That's the symbol for the Illuminati, isn't it?
Yes, I think and see, the Illuminati doesn't exist. So let's just get straight on that. It does not exist. It was an intellectual group of people in the 18th century. And they were very intellectual. They weren't Christians, but they were very intellectual. And that idea of the Illuminati got resurfaced, I think, in the 20th century by conspiracy theories. And all of a sudden now you even have people claiming they were in the Illuminati. I mean, this is just I'm sorry, but they're either imagining it or they're making it up. It's not true. I'm probably going to get a lot of people mad at me for saying this, but the Illuminati.
No, you're not. I've heard it before. Yeah.
And so, let's just take that off the table. Don't believe anybody who says the Illuminati exists or they were in the Illuminati. And this is, what, Satan uses that as a distraction from the truth, because if he can get you to believe in something that's not real, like the Illuminati, and you start worrying about the Illuminati and looking for signs of the Illuminati or symbols of the Illuminati, you're not going to notice the real occult stuff like homeopathy.
One of the things that Chuck Missler used to say was, when people reject Christianity and they reject Christ, it's amazing what they'll believe.
Well, yeah, I mean, and people into these conspiracy things are so focused on that. They're not focused on Christ. They're focused on demons, and they're focused on, I have some issues with Chuck Missler, but we won't go into that because he believed in the codes, secret codes in the Bible.
Yes, he did.
The gospel and the stars. I've had to refute that ever since day one of being.
Oh, I would love to talk about that. He got off on some weird stuff. I'll agree.
He did. He really did. And it was sad to see that, because
Cosmic codes.
He had some good teaching before that. And he had a lot of people who really liked him. And I did a post on him and I said, you need to watch out for these teachings about the gospel and the stars and the secret codes and stuff. And a lot of people were very upset with me. And I said, well, I've got to speak out on this stuff because I have to go by biblical truth and I have to refute things that aren't true. And the gospel and the stars in particular is related to me being a former astrologer.
I have not heard him teach on that. The gospel.
Yeah, I don't think he called it that, but he had a teaching on that. So I know he's gone to be, I think he was really a Christian. He's gone to be with the Lord.
He was a great guy. I used to sit in all his videos that he did here in Post Falls. So he lived here.
Oh, I forgot where you live.
I live in Post Falls, Idaho.
Oh, Idaho. Oh, you're in Idaho.
Yeah, and Chuck
Oh,
lived
I
in
think I-
Idaho, and he based his
Oh.
ministry out of Idaho.
I did not know that. I honestly did
And
not know that.
every Tuesday night, he would do his lectures for the online Bible school.
Oh, okay.
And it was open. Here's the thing, it was open to the public, and there were never more than 15 people there.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
and
listen, Dr. Geisler, who's probably, in my opinion, was the greatest Christian apologist in the 20th century. That's my opinion. I mean, there's a lot of people who would agree with me. Certainly, if they don't think he's the greatest, they would say he was one of the greatest. I remember at my seminary, which he co-founded, he started having apologetics conferences. And we were happy if 150 people came. And this was to hear not just Dr. Geisler, but he would have other people there, well-known apologists and theologians. And gradually over the years, it grew because people heard about it, more people came, it attracted more speakers. And it gradually got to where it was quite a good number of people. But for years, I was a speaker at these conferences. I would go and we were happy. I remember when it was like 300, after several years, it was like, wow, we have 300 people. And these are like some great minds, Christian minds there sharing their teaching and insights. And it was really sad. It was like, well, why aren't Christians coming? Christians just were not, and maybe still aren't, into apologetics, although I think the apologetics field has grown. Now you have more seminaries offering apologetics courses and stuff. But there initially, when Dr. Geisler started the seminary, and our seminary was apologetics focused, that was the focus of our Southern Evangelical Seminary. Not that many people. I mean, people were like, apologetics, what is that? So it was.
what are you apologizing for?
Slow going there. Yeah. What are you apologizing for? Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm not that's not what the word means. So anyway, it was slow going there for a while, but he kind of got the revival of apologetics going. And I think it can spin off in some bad ways too. It can develop into, like anything that people start and people run, it can develop, it can go into bad directions. So, you have to be careful in apologetics about certain things too. But anyway, yeah. So my main thing on Wicca and witchcraft is they're not Satanists. They actually, most of them do not want to do harm. You hear all these stories in the media and stuff. But generally speaking, that's not what they're about. They're really about nature. They kind of want to be left alone and do their thing with nature, and they want to be respected. Okay. So of course, Christians should respect everybody because everybody's made in God's image. We don't have to respect their beliefs. We don't have to say, oh, I can respect that belief about the goddess. No, I don't respect the belief about the goddess, but I respect a person who believes it. I still respect them, even if they believe in the goddess. My respect for you as a person made in the image of God has not changed. Whether you're an atheist, a Wiccan, a New Ager, a Mormon, a Jehovah's Witness, an atheist, I don't care. I respect you as a person. And that's a very important thing, I think, for Christians to remember, because I think there is this tendency to kind of categorize or stereotype people into something that for most Christians seems very alien, like witchcraft. That seems very foreign, like they can't imagine, why would anybody do that? Why do they want to be a witch, So I hope I've explained some of the reasons that people go into it, what the attraction is, that most, and you can have a spiritual conversation with someone in witchcraft. They're usually very happy to tell you about their beliefs.
Right.
So I think in some ways they're easier to talk to than New Agers. So I encourage.
They're probably easier to talk to than some Christians.
Well, it's true. Actually, that's true.
Yeah.
Actually, you're right. Okay, that was a pretty funny. That was good. That's true. So anyway, I don't want people to be afraid of them, and I don't want people to stereotype them. I want Christians to really honestly understand their beliefs. I do have an article on Wicca and witchcraft on my website, just to let people know, at christiananswersforthenewage.org. So just go to the articles page.
Yeah.
I've done a few posts on it, especially because currently it's having a revival, and apparently on TikTok witchcraft is a big thing. It has like millions of followers. And I did a program with Cultish on TikTok witches. So you have this revival of witchcraft, and it's attracting a lot of young women who see it as glamorous and as empowering. That's the other attraction for it for
There
women.
you go.
They feel empowered. So that is a very strong draw for witchcraft today, and that is causing more young people, more people from Generation Z to get
Right.
into it. So that's something to be aware of as well, for Christians to be aware of. So don't freak out, on the word, and don't freak out if you meet someone who says they're a witch. Please don't freak out. So
No, you have provided some much needed clarity to a
well, I hope
very,
so.
difficult topic. And for someone like me who grew up learning about it, watching Bugs Bunny, this was great.
Oh, good.
And there's probably a lot of people that are like me.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
learn about it through the media, through TVs,
Yep.
through movies,
Yep.
and
yep.
that's never accurate.
No, it's sometimes there's bits and pieces in there that are accurate, but it's not. It's really not. It's done for drama, for effect, because it's a entertainment. So,
But you
it's
did say
dramatized.
something. You did say something interesting. There was a book where the witches would ride brooms. Is that where that started, in a book?
No, I think it started in the Middle Ages, and I think maybe during the Inquisition. There was a book put out with a Latin name that I can't remember. It starts with an M, Malefitorium, something or other like that. That's supposed to be about witches, and it had things in there about how the witches would gather together and like in at 3 a.m. or midnight or something, and Satan would be there. He would show up. They rode brooms and all these kind of ideas. They think that maybe the idea of riding brooms comes from, there's a certain drug you can take that it's actually an herb, because that's really herbs, when they're used for mind altering experiences or for medicine, are drugs. It's considered a drug. So it makes you like have out of body experiences or think you're flying. So they think maybe it came from that. I think that idea was from the Middle Ages. I'm not positive about it, but I think so. So then it was popularized on the media,
Right.
And so, I mean, even in Harry Potter, they have that game, Quidditch, where they're on brooms.
Yeah.
I think that was sort of a take on it, where they kind of she took the idea of that and made it into this kind of fun or seemingly fun game.
Right.
And Harry Potter is not about witchcraft. It's really about sorcery. I do want to say that. So, and because it's based on the idea of alchemy, and alchemy is really sorcery. So there you go.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, I look forward to watching. I'm glad you do a lot of these interviews, and thank you for making yourself available. I really appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me on and letting me talk about this. I think it's good to share information, and we want to be informed.
Yeah.
We want to be informed accurately. We don't want to have wrong ideas about things.
And when is your interview on the Satanism stuff? Because I would bet right now that I'm misinformed on that too.
Yeah, actually right now, she and we were supposed to do this over a week ago, and she got sick, and she's just now recovered, and she just texted me today to set up a date to record it. So we're going to record it in February. I'm not sure when it's going to air, but my guess is probably not before March, because she airs her things typically a little bit later.
Okay.
And might even be later. I'm going to have to ask her, but what? I'll let you know when I know.
Who's doing the interview?
Catherine Camp, who
Okay.
she got a PhD from my seminary, and she also already had a PhD from another place. And so she has interviewed me. She has her own, this is terrible. I'm sorry, Catherine, but I can't think of the name of your podcast. She has her own podcast on YouTube, and she's done some interviews with me already. So we're
All
going
right,
to do
fabulous.
on Satanism, which is going to be kind of an intense topic. And
Yeah.
I don't really feel like an expert on it, but I feel like one of the few people that knows some things about it.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of, you know, relates to my ministry. So
Yeah.
I've talked about it before as part of a program, like on the occult or on witchcraft. I may talk about it for a little bit. I've never done just, I don't think, a whole program on it that I
Okay.
can recall.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks again. And I hope this shed light on the topic for people.
It will, and I'll probably post it early next week.
Okay, great. Great. Just send the link and I'll post it too.
Okay. And I'm probably going to want to interview you again in a few months and see how
Okay.
you're doing. You know,
Okay, sure.
I really enjoy talking to you. I learn a lot.
Great. Well, I enjoy it too. And there are more other topics we can go for, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I
I'm going
don't
to look
think we
in.
run out of topics for a long time.
I know, right? All right, kiddo. Thank
All
you.
right.
Have a good day. Thank you for your
You
time.
too. You too. Take care, Matt.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye to your little dog too. He's so cute.
Bye, Emily. Marcia says bye. She's probably sleeping. That dog
Oh, it's a
sleeps more
she.
than
Yeah. Oh, she's so cute. Yeah.
she sleeps
Okay.
more than anybody I've ever met.
All
right.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks
See ya.
again.
Yep.